The Morgan Report with David Morgan.
David Morgan with you with the weekly perspective for the week ending 12 June 2020. Well, let me just comment on the stock market. For weeks now, it's been in a confirmed uptrend. And of course, yesterday, Thursday, the 11th, we had a pretty big sell-off in the Dow. In fact, it's one of the biggest in quite some time. Today, it's not really showing a lot of strength on the comeback. And we may see some more volatility. That's about all I'll say. I will add, as always, that by almost any metric you want to use, the overall equity markets in the United States are really overvalued. Doesn't mean they can't go higher, and certainly they are getting a lot of increase in money supply that helps them to continue their upward trend. And of course, the NASDAQ just hit a all-time high here very recently. So we'll see what happens with the stock market. I'll leave it at that. First article up from Reuters. International trade set to shrink 27% in second quarter after April nosedives, says UNCTAD. The international trade is supposed to plunge by 27%, according to persisting uncertainty, said at the UN Conference on Trade and Development in a recent report. Trade in developing countries appears to have taken a nosedive, falling faster than relative to developed countries. China appears to have fared better than other major economies, with exports growing by 3% in April. Next up is CNBC. Germany's car makers face a toxic mix of challenges as they emerge from the coronavirus crisis. Germany's economically essential car manufacturing industry is emerging from a scathing period of lockdown, production halts, and slumps in sales. The sector supports tens of thousands of jobs in Germany, and exports are vital to the whole country's economy. And on and on. You can read between the lines, basically, Germany suffering the car industry. But it is not Germany alone. It is everybody. I mean, as many of us have said for basically a couple of years, there's been a lot of channel stuffing, which means manufactured cars come from the manufacturers, the Fords, the General Motors, and these cars just get put on car lots but don't sell. There is a huge oversupply, and this was before the CV19 situation. Now, post or during this current situation, I'll put it that way, we still have an overabundance, and you have the rental car business that went out of business. That puts a big glut of used rental cars that are almost new for sale at almost any price, which of course drives down prices of existing inventory, and on it goes. So I still think what I've been saying before the CV, that the world is in a contraction, and the contraction is accelerating, and we will come out of it, but it's not going to be a V-shaped recovery. It's going to take longer than most. And I think the dive down into the bottom has not actually transpired yet. I think we've got to go a few months further out in time before we really have an assessment as far as how much the overall supply chain has been broken throughout the global economy, not just in manufactured goods, but in foodstuffs as well. Zero Hedge had an article on Wednesday. Total U.S. debt increases by $1 trillion in 1 month. I think anyone that studies these financial markets, even at a cursory level, is pretty much aware of how many trillions of dollars have been flying off the Federal Reserve and loaned to the federal government. And of course, again, that's helping to spike the stock market higher. But these things usually do not end well. And this one isn't going to either. We may see a situation where the stock correction is not specifically by a downtrending stock market average, but similar to what's happened in the fiat fiasco, where we get to the end of the currency destruction, where in Zimbabwe, in Venezuela, in Argentina, in the Weimar Republic, you see an ever-increasing stock market. So the line's going up. In fact, it goes up nearly vertical. But it really doesn't provide any real asset protection, because even though it's increasing, the value of the money is decreasing at such an accelerating rate that the increased stock index number that's higher does not compensate for the loss of purchasing power. in the Weimar Republic and the others mentioned. The only thing that really does that or does it consistently is the precious metals. Are we going that direction or not? I doubt it. I still think you're going to see some semblance of the bond market holding together, and that inability to produce physical economy in a growth way will be reflected in the indexes in the stock market. But I am open to the idea that it could go the other way. Okay, I'm on our blog page. I just want to read a few headlines on the energy sector, and then I want to spend the rest of the time on an article written about silver by Jeff Clark. On the energy side, global demand in 2020 is set to fall by twice the amount lost after the 2008 financial crisis. Another headline, 24% of U.S. oil production in the Gulf of Mexico is still offline. Next headline, another major oil field goes offline as Libya's civil war escalates. Another one, Mexico oil major Pemex slashes thousands of jobs in the oil sector. And lastly, U.S. shale faces bankruptcy wave. And anyone that's followed me, and especially Steve St. Angelo, is well aware of the fracking industry. All right, this week I'm going to take the rest of my time to talk about an article written by Jeff Clark, who is the senior analyst at goldsilver.com. I've known Jeff for years, and we have conversations from time to time. And this is an article that just was published today, the 12th, and the title of the article, and this is available at goldsilver.com, by the way, the potential looming catalyst for silver that no one sees coming. And I've read this article, and there's a lot to say about it. And Jeff talks about the potential that no one sees coming, of course, and he's got 5 of them. And he talks about governments buying silver. Using silver as a monetary asset is not new. You can read the arguments here. I'm not going to read it to you. I think everyone can read this over the weekend. It actually doesn't take very long to read it. He's correct here that really the only government that held silver as a monetary asset was India. But what's interesting about the subtitle, or excuse me, the more detailed part of that is the Indian silver was not at a 999 fine purity. So it really couldn't be used as good delivery bars into the COMEX or LBMA for that matter. Not that it wasn't silver, but it wasn't refined to the level that it would need to be considered by the international community to be a monetary asset. Then he goes on to say that another reason would be a monetary crisis demands it. It's not a current central bank policy anywhere in the world, at least as we know, as to hold silver as an official reserve asset. This may or may not be kind of a takeoff on the lecture I've been giving for about 6 to 9 months now. What if silver was treated like gold? And if you got it from that, fine. And if you didn't, fine. I don't mind one way or the other. It doesn't really bother me one way or the other. It's already money. That's true. And there's a lot in the precious metals community that, insists silver isn't money. But the fact is, legally it is. I did that argument with one in our peer group. And beyond that, the word silver and money is synonymous in so many languages. And you can use it. Legally. Who wants to take a 1 ounce silver eagle that's stamped $1 and buy, half a pack of bubble gum with it? I don't think very many do, but legally you could do that. So it is legally money. Economically, no. You want it to be economical where you use silver where it's getting full value, at least the $18 an ounce it is now, but probably higher than that. Silver's cheap. We think we all know that. And nothing is impossible. He makes the argument that, all that's going on. In fact, if we go on to the tenet of modern money theory, where it doesn't matter how much money you print, it won't have any effect on the economy, which is absolute, complete, and total nonsense. But yet that theory is out there. It would certainly benefit probably the silver market more than anything else. So I just want to add on a couple things to his article here. One, I'll thank him again and Mike Maloney for what he is doing to help people get a grip on what's really going on. He talks here at the end of the article, which is a very interesting graph, what the silver supply was. Now, in 1980, the silver held by the United States was called the strategic stockpile. So for a quick review at dictionary.com, strategic, pertaining to, characterized by, or the nature of strategy. Important or essential. Third definition, of an action as a military operation, forming an integral part of a strategy. Fourth, military, intention to render the enemy incapable of making war by the destruction of materials, factories, etc. A strategic bombing mission is the example, or subset of that fourth definition, essential to the conduct of war. You could add on to that, but basically it's kind of an absolute, a necessity, a need, essential, irreplaceable, that kind of thing. So that's where we were in the silver market in 1980, as you can see. And what happened was some of the good Congress critters, etc., the nice government men decided, well, all the silver's collecting dust. And so they basically started the Silver Eagle program. It's really called Silver Liberty for fact. In 1986, and they started minting all these coins. And of course, at the time the law was enacted, it had to be domestic silver. In other words, they could burn down the stockpile, and if they needed to replenish it, you could only buy silver from silver mines in the United States. Well, that went away because that was impossible to do after a few years. So they could source silver anywhere in the world in order to keep the program going. So at one time, governments thought that it was that important, and now, of course, it's very unimportant, although it is extremely important. So I just want to go through a little bit of that brief history on it. But what I'd also like to state is that there's something I haven't done in the public before that does have to do with governments. It's a gentleman I won't name because he'd give me permission, that is spearheading a group for the Latin American community, which is where a great deal of silver comes from, as most of us know. We're talking Mexico, Argentina, Peru, and Chile, to rethink their silver assets for the sole purpose of not strategic and not monetary, although those could be considered, but for the purpose of energy conservation. In other words, why would you want to sell your silver at basically the cost it takes to get it out of the ground and make no profit whatsoever, when it could be utilized to produce energy in solar panels? I'm not a big solar fan, but I realize that the solar industry has come a long ways from the inception. It's been more efficient and less silver is used per panel by 1/2 of what it was back over a decade ago. So it's something to consider. And this, again, gentleman is spearheading a committee or forming a committee amongst these nations that has not taken place yet. It's an idea, but the proposal has been laid before some of the government officials at the higher levels in said nation states that I just named. So there's that in the back burner. Another one is, of course, technology, and I've stated on these updates a few times that the silver-based battery for mobile devices is actually the most superior that exists, but you're probably never going to see it come to the fore because of the ability of some of the financiers to basically sway markets to the directions that they wish to go. But just think about it for a moment. If you have a hearing aid battery that lasts for a long time, like a few years, they're very small. And what are they based on? Silver. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for the article, Jeff. Thank you for making us think. I'm sure that there are a lot of people that will probably go the other way about, your article. I'm trying to be neutral, but certainly it does have a long history of being money. And of course, it's money in a crisis. I mean, in my 10 rules of silver investing, I'll have to bring that up for a minute. So I'm almost at my 15-minute limit. This is on our website, 10 Rules of Silver Investing. I wrote this years ago. It's in the Global Book of Investing Rules. So just number one, when all else fails, there is silver. No one likes to be a prophet of doom, including me, but the simple truth is that silver is the world's money of last resort. Should a severe economic collapse occur, leaving assets worthless, silver will be the primary currency for purchases of goods and services. Gold will be a store of major wealth, but will be priced too high for day-to-day use. Thus, every investor should own some physical silver and store a portion of it where it's accessible in an emergency. Still hold by those words. Over here is the Silver Manifesto. I just had 1,000 copies printed, so you can buy them at these prices here rather than the $200 or $175 for a used copy on Amazon. Just come here. In the U.S., it's $40 and $5 to ship. It actually costs a little more than that, but there's some profit in that. On the international side, 15, although that sounds like a lot, we lose money on every book that we mail. We're break even or maybe slightly less, but we don't get that many international orders. If you want to buy a quantity like a case or something like that, just get a hold of support at themorganreport.com and let us know, and we'll try and make arrangements for you. 1,000 books is not that many, but it's enough to satisfy the demand. Silver is just really not that well liked by the investment community at this time, but once we get above $25 an ounce, there'll be a lot of people that will want silver. So I'll leave it at that. Wish everyone a great weekend in these extremely trying times. And remember, there's nothing more powerful than the truth. Be willing to speak it. Speak truth to power. Speak truth to the crowd at large, if it's on your side or not on your side, with you or against you. The truth works no matter what, always and everywhere, but speaking it takes courage, especially in times like these. So be willing, at least go to your innermost self and determine whether or not it's worth it. There's times it'd be probably stupid to do so, and I fully admit that. However, you have to be true to yourself too, and it means making decisions that sometimes aren't that easy, because unless we all stand, we're going to fall. We're going to fall separately. We do need to stand together. And unfortunately, there's all kinds of decisiveness and divisions and problems within the arena of our basic human beingness, if there's such a word, that we might want to take a deep breath and contemplate from time to time. So I'll leave it there. No more philosophy. Look forward to coming back to you. Let me know if you like the comment on Jeff's article. Thank you again, Jeff and Mike. We appreciate your efforts to make the community and the precious metals think. Thank you.